Record. It's going to ask you if you're okay with recording, and just click OK if you are. If you're not, I think it boots you out, but you want to stay. It's going to be fun. So again, the APSPM is something that all the state agencies use and the institutions to make sure that they are purchasing within the guidelines and the laws of Virginia. And EVA is there for them to use as a tool to help with that. So the P2P process, this is a high level. So I'm sure you've heard of P2P. It stands for procure to pay. And really, it's just the small purchase process. So small dollar value purchase process. So first of all, you start with requisitions, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Next week, we're going to go over the orders and receiving part. So I'm going to refer back to this next week when we talk about orders and receiving. But for today, we're just going to talk about requisitions. So I want to talk a little bit about what a requisition is, because unless you are a seasoned person in purchasing, it can seem like a weird term a little bit. So if you think about it, purchase requisition as a request to purchase something, that always helps me with REQ, request and requisition. And it's basically an expression of a need. So you want to purchase something and you need to submit a requisition, which after it gets approved turns into a purchase order. So think about the purchase requisition as that first stop in the process. So you've identified you want something and you start a requisition to document that need. So for EVA, you have the ability to select items from a built-in catalog. You have the opportunity to also go to a supplier maintained catalog website. You all know it as a punch out. And I think Sandy already went over those, the ins and outs of the catalog purchases. So today we're going to talk more about requisitions that start as a non-catalog item. So that's anything that doesn't fall into the built-in catalog or to the punch out catalog. So again, just as a reminder, a requisition is that expression of a need. You want to purchase something, and the requisition is the documentation of that request. Also want to say, if at any point you have any questions, please do not feel like you can't interrupt me. I want you to interrupt me with questions as we go along. This is pretty informal. I like that it's a small group. Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat at any time, and I would be happy to answer it. So feel free to just stop me. So we're going to go over the requisition process in current EVA and talk a little bit about these steps, and then I'll show you in the live demo some things that we can talk about for each of these steps that some of the end users might be contacting you about and have questions about. So we already talked about creating a requisition, and then the second part of that process is filling in that header information, which we'll look at, and then adding line items, because after you put the header information in, you need to add the line items to say what you want to purchase. You also have the ability to add comments, and those can be in a couple different places, and we'll talk about who can view what and where they should go. Also, attachments. So this might be things that are related to the purchase. For a non-catalog purchase like we're talking about, this would be something like a quote or any type of supporting documentation for this purchase that other people viewing it or approving it might need to see. After you have done all of that data input with filling out the header, adding line items, comments, and attachments, you then submit the requisition for approval. It goes through the approval flow and it becomes a purchase order once it has completed that approval flow. And then after it becomes a purchase order, you do have the ability to cancel a requisition even before it gets to that point, or to copy a requisition, which some end users might ask you all about, because if they're purchasing the same thing over and over again, it's helpful for them to go back and copy a previous requisition. So let's hop right into the requisitions demo. And I'm going to stop sharing this screen, but before I do, we're going to talk about starting a requisition and creating a confirming order. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And also allow me to apologize if I'm looking over here, because my environment's over here and you all, as part of the Zoom webinar, are on my other screen. So that is why I might look over here. I promise I'm not trying to be rude. So we're going to talk about starting a requisition and creating a confirming order. So people might call you and say, hey, listen, I don't know where to go to start my requisition. How do I do that? So I'm in the UAT environment right now, and I will show you. This is probably a refresher for a lot of you, especially if you've taken the learning pathways in the LMS. But to create that requisition, you would just go to procurement. Procurement is the tab where you're going to find most of the P2P actions. So just know if anything is P2P related, and as Gania mentioned, that's requisitions, orders, or receipts, you're always going to want to go to the procurement tab. And you can see right here, you have browse requisitions. And what's nice is it lines up with how the process goes. So you have requisitions, orders, receipts. So I'm sure that was done by design, which is fantastic. So you do have the ability right here under browse requisitions. You have a couple different options. The first one is to create a requisition. So this is anything that is not a confirming order. So let's talk about what a confirming order is. A confirming order is when, let's say I purchase something and I have not done a request or a requisition for it yet, but I have already paid for it. When I go back in to do a confirming order, it's basically just a documentation of the purchase that I made, and it still needs to go back through the approval flow. So if people call and ask, I'm not sure if this is, one way or the other, what's a confirming order? You'll know that that's when somebody has purchased something already and they need to document it for transparency purposes and for audit purposes. So before we jump into creating the requisition, I want to show you where you can go to create a confirming order, and it is literally right under that create requisition, which makes it nice. The only difference I will show you is here it says purchase for the type, but if I click on create confirming order, it does have the type as confirming order. And I do want to let you all know, because this might be a question that comes up a lot, is I have started a requisition, but I want to make it a confirming order. So this is a question we've gotten a lot in hypercare, and the answer to that is you cannot change it from a requisition to a confirming order, and you can't change a confirming order to a requisition. So once you start, you're set. You are locked into doing it that way. So if somebody says, I created a requisition by mistake, and I need to create a confirming order, they're going to have to cancel that first requisition and then create a confirming order. So that's something that's a little bit different than what they might be used to. Any questions about requisitions as opposed to confirming orders? Okay. And I'm going to start sharing my PowerPoint again. So we went through step one. Let's talk about step two, which is filling in that header information. And we're going to do a non-catalog order, as I mentioned. And here we'll talk about header fields, ad hoc approvers, and P cards. So I will stop sharing that and start sharing my environment again. So the header information is always at the top of the requisition, and it kind of is the summary, if you will, of all the other parts of the requisition. So it's kind of, here's the information that applies to everything that is in the requisition. So always want to fill it out first. And there are different types of fields in here. And what do I mean by that? I mean that some have asterisks asterisks, I think that's how the plural of asterisks, and some do not. So anything with the asterisks is something that is required. And if somebody calls in and says, hey, you know, I have something different than what you are seeing if you're sharing your screen, just know that different organizations have different setups. So they might have different fields, additional required fields. It really just depends on the setup. But at the very least, they will have the ones that we were going to go over. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a test requisition. So there's that first field, which is the name. The organization will default to them. The purchase type, which we mentioned, can't be changed. Their PO category, if they have questions about this, it's really something that needs to go to their procurement department or to their account executive. It's not necessarily something you need to guide them on. That's more of a policy thing. So for instance, if they have a technology purchase, they should be coding it as a technology, but it really depends on what their business process is at their current organization. And then the same thing with the procurement transaction type. They do have a reference number here. It's not required. And then they might also have some header fields. I have them here just as an example when I do the demo for the end users to show them that they might have additional fields, but those may or may not be there. So if you have taken the VILTs with me, you know that I like to say this is a save to see other options system. Not a technical term, so don't use it in your daily language because people will look at you oddly because it's a Sarah term, just to remind me that if I'm not seeing anything where I can take action, that I probably haven't clicked the save button. So I'm going to click save. And hopefully UAT is being nice to me today. I'm so glad it's like internal folks rather than our end users, because when that happens on a demo, it is not fun. So now you can see it's opened some additional options. You can see my ship to and my bill to here, items and services, allocations, attachments, internal comments. But remember, we're still focusing on the header. So we're going to talk about the workflow and what that is going to look like. So before your end user submits the requisition, they do have the ability to go to the workflow preview. It's probably not going to show anything because I haven't added any line items yet. So we'll come back and take a look at that a little bit later. And then they also do have the ability to put an approver into the approval flow. So an ad hoc approver is somebody that's not already in the approval flow that the end user wants to add to that approval flow, maybe for them to see the order, or maybe they just want some additional approvals. So that is where you have the ability to do that. Also, people will ask, okay, well, how do I add my P card to this order? So one of the things I like to tell the end users is that this left navigation is something that is consistent throughout the new platform, and I use it as a checklist, meaning I go through each of these tabs and make sure that I have everything filled out before I submit anything. So if they remember that and remember that it's a checklist, they'll always know to go to P card. And then it has just one little box where you can select a P card. The P card has to be tied to that person's profile in order for them to add it. So they can't enter it right here. They'd have to enter it in their profile. And we can absolutely talk about that and go over that a little bit later. It's one of the questions that we're going to go over. So once we get to that point, I'll show you where they enter that information. But you can see I already have one that's attached to my profile. So I'm going to click and select it there and then click save. So I want to make sure that it has picked up my P card. And if they select a P card and hit save, it will become a purchase card order. So if they want to use their P card, they have to go here to add that information. You might hear some users say, in the legacy platform, I used to be able to check a box. Yes, that is how it was, but in the new platform, they need to make sure that they're going to the P card tab in left navigation. So I'm going to click save here, make sure all of that information has been saved. And I'm going to stop sharing and go back to our PowerPoint slideshow. So what's the next step? The next step is adding line items. So we're going to go over adding a line item, but we're also going to focus on external contract numbers and where those go, because a lot of folks have questions about that, suppliers and how to select those, and then also allocations. So let's hop back over and take a look at our requisition, where we just were. And now we have the ability to add a line item, and it's right under items and services, and you can click on add line item. So the reason that this is a little bit different from the catalog items, you have to enter more information if you're an end user and you're doing a non-catalog order, because a lot of this information would come over from the catalog if it was a catalog item, whether it be a built-in catalog or a punch out. But when you're doing a non-catalog order, you as the end user have to enter all of this information. So I'm just going to put test item in here. And then we come down to commodity. And in case you guys didn't know this already, you probably do, there is predictive text in the new platform, which is kind of cool. So you can start typing. I have cupcakes on the brain for some reason. So I just start typing cakes, and you can see that it comes up with some options. So you can select that there. And then we come over to unit price. Just going to put something in there. Then we come down to deliver to. So this is who is going to be receiving the order. And a lot of the end users like to have this in case they're doing purchases for someone else and it's not being sent to them. They have the ability to put a different person there so that the supplier knows who to send it to. So then we come down to supplier, and I want to focus on this because remember, it's one of the three things we said we're going to really focus on when we're adding a line item, because folks have questions about it. And that's adding different suppliers. So recently we put in a fix that if they select someone that is discontinued or someone that isn't a current anything except an active supplier, that it will not let you submit that. So a lot of end users have said, how in the world do we know that? Well, if you look at this list of suppliers, as I scroll down, you can see that the second line at the end has in parentheses what their status is. And that's how you can let the end user know which suppliers are active suppliers. So they shouldn't be picking anyone that's discontinued, shouldn't be picking anyone that's in the registration process. It's really only active suppliers. So I'm just going to select this one at the top. And you can see once you select it, it does populate that information. So there are some additional internal details. Honestly, this is something that normally comes over if it's a contract item. It's not something they need to worry about. But one of the big questions that we get a lot from end users is, where do I put the external contract number? So what's an external contract? It's basically a contract that was established at the entity level instead of a statewide contract, and they normally have different numbers than what the system generates. So they want to make sure that that external contract number is documented somewhere, and then they can run reports on it and see how many times or how active that contract is. So if you get that question, they can put the external contract number here, which is under the supplier visible additional information, because that's something the supplier might need to see. And they can add that information there. So next we're going to talk about allocations. So you scroll down and you see that there are a section marked other, and then allocation chart of accounts. So I'm not seeing a place where I can enter allocation information, but remember, this is a save to see other options system. So once you click save and you scroll down, now you see your allocation table. So if people call in and say, I cannot figure out where to put my allocation information, it's probably because they haven't hit save and that table hasn't come up. So all they have to do is hit save and they'll see the ability to add that. They're set up just like the header fields might be different than what you see here. it really just depends on what the organization's setup is. So for ours, I think we just have to put in the fiscal year, and then I'm going to hit save. So before we add any comments or attachments, just want to make sure that all of that was clear. Please interrupt me if you have questions. I'm going to put a random external contract number in here. I can't use ABC because that actually is an organization, the one where I used to work, so I don't want to put that in there, even though it's UAT. And then I can click save. So again, the big points here are selecting a supplier and how to see who's active, where to put the external contract number, and finally the allocations table, because a lot of our end users do utilize allocations, and they might call it accounting information. So that takes care of step 3. Hopefully this isn't making anybody too dizzy that I'm switching back and forth. Let's go on to step 4. We're going to do step 4 and step 5 together because they relate in the sense that there's different types of visibility for comments and attachments and different places for them to go. So we're going to do step 4 and step 5 and take a look at the comment visibility and also attachment visibility and where they can go. So let's stop sharing and start sharing my other screen. So we have added all of our line item information, but we haven't added any comments or attachments. So I'm going to click save one more time and then save and close. And let's talk first about comments and attachments that are on the header. So what do I mean when I say on the header? It doesn't necessarily happen right here, but here you are on the purchase requisition, you're on the header, the main part. So you have the option to add comments here and attachments, but you also have the ability to do that on the line item itself. So we're going to start with doing it on the header. So 2 places where you can put comments, and I keep saying you because I'm so used to training end users. So 2 places where end users can put comments. The first one is under the ship to and the bill to address. And if you roll your mouse over this, it lets you know that this comment is visible to suppliers. So we get end users that have questions about that too. How in the world do I know which box to put it in? So if you just roll your mouse over that, it lets you know that this is a supplier visible comment. Then you might want to know, or the end user might want to know where to put an internal comment, meaning something that the supplier does not see, but that anybody that has access to EVA can see it. And that is all the way at the bottom, internal comments. And it even has another tooltip here letting you know that this comment is not visible to suppliers. So I will say not visible to suppliers comment. So that's where they can put the 2 different types of comments. So basically, who can see what for comments is dependent on which box they put it in. So I will click save. Then we have at the header level also the ability to add attachments. And the visibility of attachments at the header level is determined before they even upload the document. So all they have to do is expand that section, click add new document, and then they have the ability to select the visibility at this point. So the system says, hey, do you want an internal attachment or do you want a supplier document? Internal stays internal to the EVA system, and supplier document allows the supplier to see it. So this is where they are choosing the visibility as opposed to the comments where it is in different locations. So I'm going to click supplier document, and this allows the end user to put in some information about the document they're uploading. I'm just going to put quote in here. They can add a summary if they want to, and it does have the ability to click and drag if needed. Sure, let's attach the receiving guide. So pretending that it's a quote, all I had to do was click on this little box and it allows you to search on your computer, or they can click and drag them. The status is always approved. I like to hit save and close. And if we scroll down, we can see that that attachment has been added, and it tells you right here what type of document it is. So if they're not sure after they've uploaded it what type they selected, they're able to see that here. So those are comments and attachments on the header. Now they have the same ability on the line item. And most of the time it's a preference. The end user wants to utilize the header or the line item, or if they have multiple line items with different quotes or different comments, that's normally where they would use the line item to add the comments or attachments. So let's take a look at where the comments are, because remember, for the comments, it depends on the location, determines that visibility. So first, we have a comment under supplier visible additional information, but you also have this tooltip here that lets you know that this comment is visible to the supplier and it will be on the purchase order. Or if the end user wants to add an internal comment, they do have the ability to do that just by scrolling down a little bit. So again, similar to the header, depends on what box they're going to use. Then if they wanted to do an attachment, looks very similar to the header, and it works exactly the same way, where they would click on add new document and then select the visibility here, whether they want it to be internal or supplier related. So since we already uploaded something, I won't upload or add a comment there. But the thing to remember here is that on both the header and the line item, the comment visibility depends on where you put the comment, and the attachment visibility depends on what type you pick before you upload it. So that is comments and attachments. Before we go on, does anybody have any questions about that? Feel free to unmute yourselves and interrupt me. Excellent. So let's go on to step 6, where we're going to talk about workflow, and then we're also going to talk about withdrawing a requisition. These are topics that I've seen a lot during hypercare. So I think they will be helpful to you. So let's stop sharing here and go over to my environment again. So remember I said that the workflow preview is always here before you click that submit button. And now that we've added a line item, I want to show you what that's going to look like. So if anybody says, hey, I have no idea where this requisition is going to go after I click submit, this is where the end user can go to see that. It's a little bit different than the way it used to be, but the thing to remember is this rule order number and then also the label. If there are multiple folks that have the same rule label and order number, it means they're in the same approval, what we now refer to as a node, meaning that any of them can approve at that level. It's just that there are multiple people in there. We're in UAT, so this is kind of dummy data, but I wanted to show you how someone can see where it's going to go next. And that is where the end user can view that information. But let's say they also are looking on this list and they're like, you know, I need to add somebody that's not in my approval flow. Not a problem. They can come over to ad hoc approver. Again, here's that left navigation that I talk about being a checklist, that it's important to make sure that the end user is clicking on both of them to make sure they have all the information. We click on insert approver, and then it lets the end user select anybody from their organization. So I'm actually going to insert myself into here, which is silly, but it's fine. We'll do it. And then they can't select anybody that is not an AVA user and not currently in the system, but they can start typing. It's that predictive text again, which is nice. So once they've picked who that person is, they then get to say where they're going to go in the approval flow. And this is kind of nice because they either want them to go before or after, and then one of the predefined rules that's already established in the workflow. So they give you a little preview here of what we just looked at on the other tab. And I want to add myself after $2 approver. So you can see if I select that, it means that I'm going to be inserted into the approval flow after these folks. They can put a reason if they want to. I will leave that blank for now since it's not required, and click save, and then save and close. And then if they want to verify that they have added that person into the approval flow, they can go back to workflow preview, and you can see that here I am added in here again as the ad hoc approver after the $2 approvers. So hopefully that is clear as mud, as I like to say. So we're going to close that. So anytime they want to see that workflow preview or add an ad hoc person, they just need to click on that workflow and ad hoc button. So now we're going to pretend that they have already submitted the requisition, and they call and they say, oh no, I have to fix something on my requisition. What do I do? Do I have to wait for it to go through the approval flow? They don't. So they have the ability to do what's called withdrawing a requisition, meaning as it's going through the approval flow, at any point in that process, they have the ability to withdraw the requisition, which takes it out of the approval flow and back into their hands to make any adjustments. This happens sometimes if they forgot to add an attachment or a comment and they don't think of it until after they've submitted it. So they do have the ability to withdraw, and the system asks them, are you sure you want to do that? And once you withdraw that requisition as the end user, you then have the ability to change anything you need. And there's that submit for approval button again that you can press, and it will start the approval flow back over again. Any questions about submitting the requisition for approval, or the workflow, or withdrawing a requisition, putting ad hoc approvers in? Feel free to interrupt me. Okay. We will go back and talk about our last step quickly, because then we will spend the last 30 minutes today going over some of the questions that we've had come in that I think will help prepare you to support the P2P module. So this last option is canceling a requisition or duplicating a requisition. So we're going to take a look at canceling a requisition, and then what to do if somebody asks to duplicate one and how they do that. So we'll go back in here. So let's say that they have withdrawn the requisition because they wanted to make changes to it, but then they realize, oh, actually, I don't even want to make changes to it. I need to cancel this. It's no longer something that's needed. My supervisor told me I don't need it to have that anymore. The way that they can cancel is to go to other actions, and you will see something that says cancel requisition. When you click cancel requisition, it does ask you, or the end user, are you sure you want to cancel this? Because once they cancel it, that's it. They can't get it back. It's not something that they can request be brought back up. I'm not even sure that CGI, our vendor, is able to do that. So that's why there's that little extra, are you sure you want to cancel this? So if they say, okay, it basically takes you back to the browse requisitions because it knows that you have canceled it and it's no longer there. You can't even see it in here as a canceled requisition. But let's say that they have previously purchased something, they don't want to start a new requisition, they want to copy one. They do have the ability to do that. And we are already on the browse requisitions page, which is where they would go to start that. And if they want to, this little handy dandy my request box, and end users can click on that to see just requisitions that they've created. So if there's a previous one that they want to cancel, all they would have to do is navigate, and they can search for keywords if they know one of the keywords that's in the name of the requisition. And they would navigate to that requisition. And then they do have the ability here under other actions. This is one that's currently in progress, which is why you're seeing the withdrawal requisition, but they have the ability to still duplicate that one. So we will click OK. The system does ask you, are you sure you want to duplicate this? And once they say OK, you can see that it's made a copy of the requisition. So what I do tell end users at this point is to go through the requisition still, even though it's copied all of the information, just to make sure that it's reflective of whatever they're currently purchasing, because maybe they need to change allocation information, maybe they need to upload an attachment. They still need to go through the duplicated requisition and make sure that all of the information pertains to the current order and not the old one. So I do want to add that as well. Any questions about that? Okay. So I've stopped sharing my environment and now we get to go into
Sarah, I did have a question. Sorry.
Sure.
So when you did the duplication or you duplicated the requisition, would it have also duplicated the ad hoc approver?
That is a good question. I do not think that it does.
So the ad hoc is only that one time for per requisition.
Let me see, because now I'm curious. Let me find the one that I just did. I don't know why it's not showing me the one that we just did. Oh, because I canceled it. Duh. Let me check on that, Kania, because I'm not positive and I don't want to tell you something that's not correct. So I'm going to add this to my little sticky note on my computer. Our ad hoc approvers copied over when duplicating a requisition.
And also, is there a time where you cannot or you don't get the option to cancel a rec?
I think that the only time that you're not going to get that option is if it's already gone through the whole approval flow, because then you would have to cancel the PO as opposed to the requisition.
Got it. So once it's been submitted and all the approvers have approved it, so that means it becomes the purchase order at that point?
Yep. And then you can't cancel the requisition because you'd have to cancel the order. So that's where that cancellation comes from.
Gotcha.
Yep. Just verified that when a requisition is an ordered status, meaning it's gone through all the approval flow, you can no longer cancel the requisition. You have to go to the PO and cancel the PO.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Switch back to my PowerPoint. So now we're going to talk about some real issues and review them, and I want to get some feedback from you. I know that was a whole lot, and you might not remember everything, but we're going to work on these as a team, so don't worry. But feel free to unmute yourselves if you know the answer. So the first question is, how do I make my requisition in EVA a confirming order? So this is an end user that's either calling in or sending an email and asking this question. What would you tell them? Don't be shy. Oops.
I don't want to cheat and answer all the questions. I'm going to leave it for somebody else. I know the answer, but I'm not going to answer it.
Right. I'm not trying to say anything either. I'm trying to give the specialist an opportunity to.
How about this? I'll do a sub question of this, which is if somebody contacts you and says that they created a requisition and they want to change it to a confirming order, is that something that they can do? So they can't change a requisition to a confirming order if they're already in the requisition. They would have to cancel the requisition they're currently doing and create a confirming order. Because remember, at the one of the first things we talked about was when you're creating a requisition, you either create a requisition or you create a confirming order. And once you have started one or the other, you are locked in. So if they want to change it to a confirming order, they're going to have to cancel the first requisition and create a confirming order rather than creating a requisition. Okay. Next question. Can another user order on our behalf with access to our credit card? If yes, do I just enter my credit card information in their profile? I'm actually going to talk a little bit about this one because we didn't go in depth on it. So I'm going to stop sharing and show you all my environment one more time. So remember, as a reminder, the question to you all from the end user is, can another user order on behalf of someone else and use access to their P card? So they do have the ability to change the on behalf of, or what we now refer to as the requester, to someone else that is in their organization. And when they do that, so I'm selecting Tom Hanks because he's my user in UAT. I'll click save, and it's going to ask if I want to confirm the reset of allocations because I'm selecting a different requester. And once I click save, I will show you that there should now be another P card that I have to choose from. You can see there's the one we saw earlier, and then test one, which I know is Tom Hanks's card. So they do have the ability to do an order on behalf of, is what they might refer to it as. It's basically changing the requester, and then they can utilize their P card. When they do this, when they change the on behalf of, it does add that person into the approval flow, because we don't want people creating requisitions on behalf of other people without that other person knowing. So when they do that, it does give the ability to the requester to have access to the P card. There are two other ways that they can get someone else's P card added to the order. The first one is if they have an approver that's in the approval flow, that approver can add their card. Or if they want to ad hoc someone in, they can also add their card that way. But this user said, do I just enter my credit card information in their profile? Absolutely not. Anytime that you get a question about someone wanting to enter their credit card information into someone else's profile, that is not the way that it is done in the new platform. They have three options that they can choose from: the on behalf of, getting an approver to add that into the approval flow, or adding an ad hoc approver who can also apply their P card. Also, I promised that I would show you where you can add the P card information, or where end users can. So here at the top right, you see a little drop down arrow, and you can select my profile. And once that comes up, if it's choosing not to be slow, you can scroll down and you can see that I have the ability to add a P card here. And they would fill out all the information, save and close, and then save on this screen as well. And then anything that is added, a P card that's added here, is able to be used by that person when they're creating a requisition. But if they don't have a P card and they want to use someone else's, again, those three options are: you can either do an on behalf of and change that requester to the person whose card they want to use. They can ask an approver that has a P card to add their P card in, or they can ad hoc somebody in that's not already in the approval flow to add their P card. So that was a little bit of a complicated one. Go back to my.
That's also a far cry from the way it used to be too. That's a big change.
Big change. Okay, we kind of talked about this, kind of not, and you might not, as new specialists, be familiar with the term watcher. But the question is, I need information on how to add a watcher to the requisition. So let me explain to you what a watcher was in the legacy platform, which is something you might hear people refer to and say, well, I was able to do this. In the legacy platform, users were able to add what's known as a watcher instead of an approver to a requisition, meaning that person was just told that this requisition is happening and they weren't required to approve it. In the new platform, there is no concept of a watcher. It's not something they can do. If they want to add someone to the requisition to see it, they have to add them as an ad hoc approver. There is no watcher ability where you add somebody that just you want to see the order rather than approving. If you want somebody to see the order that is not in the approval flow and you want them to be aware of it, they have to be added as an ad hoc approver. The other option is they can also just send the requisition number to the person that they want to see it so that person can look it up. So something that was available in the legacy platform that is not something that's available now. We would suggest to them that they do an ad hoc approver or send the PR number to the person that wants to see it so they can take a look. We've been getting this one a lot, which is why was my requisition refused? So I think there's been some misunderstanding that somehow the EVA team is refusing requisitions. Not happening. That somebody in their approval flow has refused the requisition for one reason or another. So this is another new thing that we didn't go over when we were going over the steps that I will go over now, which is where they can view that information and why something was refused. So let's go to browse requisitions. I'm going to filter by rejected. And I don't need my requests. So if somebody says, hey, why was my requisition refused? You can always direct them to the workflow tab on the left navigation. And you can scroll down, and these red marks mean that it was refused. And normally, in fact, all the time, because the person who refuses it is required to put a comment in there, they can click on that comment and it lets them know what needs to be fixed so that they can withdraw the requisition and fix that and then resubmit it. So this is another change that folks are having a little bit of a hard time getting used to, because they used to be able to just go and see exactly what was refused. And I think it even came through in their notification email, but now they need to go to the workflow, find where the red status buttons are and click on that little comment cloud, and it lets them know what needs to be fixed. And most of the time, if I'm responding via email, I'll do like a quick screenshot just so they can see where they need to go.
Sarah, do they get a notification at all?
They do get a notification that it's been refused. It doesn't mention in the notification why.
Ah, okay.
Okay. In the old system, approvers were able to add attachments to the end user's requisitions. Is this a feature that can be activated in the new system? So this is another change that you'll hear some end users mention, which is the ability for some approvers to make changes or add attachments to requisitions. So for right now, approvers are not able to do anything except add their P card or select their P card for the order. So they can't add attachments, they can't add comments, they can't make any changes to the requisitions. There was a role in the previous platform that allowed some approvers to do that, but that currently is not something that they are able to do. So approvers are only able to approve or to add their P card to the requisition. They aren't able to make any other changes.
That's a big one to remember, Miranda and team. That's a big one. I can tell you now. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's a huge change as well.
Yeah, I definitely have had a lot of complaining issue track tickets about that, and it's a pain point, but for right now, it's not something that we're changing. So next is I'm not getting notifications every time someone approves my requisition. How do I fix this? So this is another change from the previous platform. In the previous platform, an end user that submitted a requisition would get an email every time somebody approved the requisition. The only time that they will get an email about their requisition being approved is when it has hit that final approval node and it turns into an order. So basically, the system doesn't notify the end user unless an order has been refused or unless it has gone through the approval flow and successfully become an order. And then it says, hey, you have a new order to view, and lets them know that it has gone through the approval flow. There's no longer getting notifications at every step of the way. It's only if it's been refused or if it has gone through the entire approval flow successfully and turned into an order. How do I add an unregistered supplier? Does anybody know the answer to this before I just decide to talk about it? I guess I'm realizing too that some of the stuff we went over doesn't necessarily go over what I pulled from issue track, but that's okay. We're all learning. So different types of suppliers, which we talked about and which ones to select. Having the active supplier is the only one that they're able to select and have it successfully go through. But if they have an unregistered supplier, meaning they're not even state entered, which I think you all are familiar with, whether they're self-registered, which is always what we want them to be, or state entered, meaning that they have been registered by somebody who is a purchasing professional. The thing about that the EVA team doesn't particularly like is that it puts the fees back on the end user as opposed to sharing that fee with the supplier. But there are some times, even though we strongly discourage this, that they might need to do an unregistered. So meaning they're not an EVA at all. The only way that currently in the new platform that end users can do this is if they create a confirming order. So I'm just going to quickly add some test stuff in here so I can show you where they can do that. They cannot add it if it's a regular requisition. It is only on confirming orders that they have the ability to add an unregistered supplier. So it says unable to register supplier, and once they click on that box, it allows them to enter the name here. Again, something that we strongly discourage, but if they're saying, yep, I got approval, and remember this still has to go through the approval flow, they do have the ability to do that, but only if they create a confirming order. It cannot be done on requisitions. Any questions about that? Okay, my requisition is showing an error about it being a non-catalog order. How do I fix that?
Hold on 1 second, Sarah.
Sure.
There's a message in the chat, and I think it was from Tennille about, can you repeat that? I'm not sure which part.
Tennille, did you want me to repeat the unregistered vendors and how people add those? Awesome. So the only way that somebody, not a problem, happy to. The only way that somebody can add an unregistered vendor is if they create a confirming order. So as opposed to a requisition. So they can either create a requisition or a confirming order, and they can only add unregistered vendors or suppliers to a confirming order, not a regular requisition. You are so welcome.
Can you do me a favor, Sarah? And I'm
Sure.
not really sure if our newer specialists are even really used to the terminology confirming order. Can you go into that just a little bit more? Like, I know Miranda knows from a legacy system about how they typically use the confirming order, but just kind of knowing the difference between the two, meaning, one is basically it's been purchased previously, whereas the other one is this is pretty much a new purchase. There's some examples too. Thank you.
Absolutely. It can be kind of a difficult concept because you're thinking, okay, well, what's the difference and why would they need to differentiate it? So think of a confirming order as something that has already been purchased. So there's no request because it's already been purchased. So the reason it's called a confirming order is because the end user has already purchased that item and they are just putting that information into the platform to document that that purchase was made. So it's not a request for purchase, it's a confirming order because they've already purchased that item or service. When you have a regular requisition, it means that you are literally starting at the beginning. You have not purchased anything. You are putting in your request to purchase something. So I'm trying to think of every agency is different, but at ABC a lot, we had folks that they would call and pay an invoice over the phone, which is something that we discourage, but again, it depends on what the business process is at their agency. And then what they would do is go in and create a confirming order for that, so that when the vendor gets it, they know that it's already something that's been paid for. They don't have to fill the order. It's already something that has taken place. So think of it as coming back and documenting that purchase. So if you take your receipts at the end of the week and put them in a spreadsheet to track your spending, you've already made those purchases and you're just tracking the spending for yourself. Whereas if you do something like, hey, here's what I think I'm going to purchase, or here's what I'm going to request to purchase, that's not something that's happened yet. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a weird distinction, but if you think of a regular requisition as a request to purchase something and a confirming order as a documentation of something that has already been purchased, it helps a little bit. Hopefully.
Thank you.
Yep. And then just to show you, I think I'm sharing okay, good. I'm sharing my environment. And just to show you here, they go to either create requisition or create confirming order. So they're both available under the procurement browse requisitions section. You all are so welcome. I know it's such a weird concept. That's right, we are on this one. So my requisition is showing an error about it being a non-catalog order. How do I fix that? So they will always get an error about something being a non-catalog order, but there are two types of errors in the new platform. One is a non-blocking error, and the other one is a blocking error. So what's the difference? A non-blocking error is basically something that just says, hey, end user, we want you to know that this is what we're seeing, and we want you to know, verify that you're okay with that. You can see that non-blocking errors are always in orange in this little triangle. And if we click on any one of those, what happens is it kind of freaks our end users out a little bit to see an error of any kind. But if they see an orange one, they can roll their mouse over it, and it lets them know what the error is. But also, if it's orange, they are still able to submit the order. It's not something that's going to block them. However, if they see a red circle. So here it says missing mandatory allocation information. That is something that will block them from submitting it. And I'll show you how that happens. So if I click submit for approval, it's going to bounce back and say, nope, you can't submit this yet because you need to take a look at your blocking alerts, which is your little alerts and messages are here. So I will go down and fix the allocation information because remember we talked about where that is located and it's on the line item. And I will click save and close. And then you can see that that red has disappeared and I am now able to submit for approval. So it does freak them out when they do a non-catalog order sometimes if they see that there's that non-blocking error, but it's just a way for the system to say, hey, we just want to verify that you know this before you submit it. But you can tell those end users not to worry about it. It is a non-blocking error. Okay. I need to add an approver to the approval flow. How do I do that? This is something I know you guys know the answer to since we went over it. How would they do that and what is that called? Any takers? No takers? I thought this would be an easy one. That's okay. I know it's a little bit nerve-wracking. Oh, wait, got chat. Ad hoc, yes. Yes, great job, Celeste. That's exactly what it is. An ad hoc, they would add an ad hoc approver and they are able to do that from the workflow preview and ad hoc button. Great job. How do I add an attachment to an order in progress without having to start over? So this kind of also goes back to what we were talking about with approvers being able to add attachments. The requester or the person who created the requisition is not able to add an attachment to an order in progress unless they do that withdraw feature that we mentioned. So they can't make changes to anything on their requisition once it's already started, that approval flow, unless they withdraw the requisition and make the changes that way. And unfortunately for them, if they do that, it does start the approval flow process over. So something that end users might ask, hey, I have to add something, but does it mean it has to start over? Yes. If they are going to withdraw the requisition and resubmit it, it starts the approval flow over from the beginning. Oh, is that my last one? Well, awesome. And I think I have like still 5 minutes left, which is unbelievable because I talk a lot and have talked a lot. So now also with the 5 minutes left, ask me questions that maybe we didn't go over or that you might have overheard from people or seen in the box. Let me know.
Okay, Sarah, just to clarify, so if they're trying to create or initiate a requisition and they're going to be shopping from the punch out, I guess are they going to be going to shop and then create or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
They would need to go to shop first.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good question. Anything else? I am happy to answer anything. And while you guys are thinking about if you have any questions, like Gania mentioned, even though I am going to be starting a new position, I'm still here. I'm still available. I don't mind if you guys still need to reach out to me, especially while they're trying to fill the position. I'm happy to help if I can. So don't be shy to reach out. Any other questions you can think of? Hopefully today was helpful. You guys were kind of like my beta test group. Since this is my first group, we're going to do the experienced specialists at 3. But hopefully you found this helpful. And thank you to Gania and Miranda for meeting and coming up with the concept of having these two separate groups so that you all, we can tailor the training a little bit to you. But if you don't have anything else, I will give you back 3 minutes and I will see you next Tuesday to talk about the second part in the P2P process, which is orders. So we'll talk about orders and change orders and all that good stuff. Same type of setup, except we wanted to do introductions next time since we did them this time. So there's something good. Well, thank you all. And if you think of anything, just let me know.
Well, Sarah, thank you for taking the time out. We really appreciate it. It was a great session. I know I learned some stuff today, and I've been playing with it for over a year now.
Good. See, that means a lot. That means a lot.
So
Good.
it's awesome to go through this session and actually get some additional tips. And I'm sure you guys working in the hypercare for the past few months, I mean, that's great knowledge and information to pass along to us because you got to experience it, right? I mean, it's one
Absolutely.
thing to use the tool, but it's another thing, you know, to actually be on the other end and the supporting end of it. And the
Yeah.
other comment I would like to make is it is really interesting how, at least I see with some of the tickets that come through, how there is truly a misconception of understanding that EVA is the tool. And you know, the buyers or the you know, procurement professionals using the tool, it's the user and the information that they put in it. So we do see some tickets come through or questions about, oh, I made a purchase or I submitted my requisition, you know, where's my order? Like we're supposed to, it's like,
Right.
you made a requisition, you submitted, the order went through, it goes to the supplier. It's the supplier you need to reach out to to find out where your order is. But it is really interesting to see that they actually think because they're doing it inside the tool that that's where everything is happening. And it's like, no, that's just the vehicle. That's the vehicle to get the order there, but it's not the one that's actually producing the order. It doesn't produce the products that
Doesn't
you
happen
purchase.
automatically.
Yeah, exactly. So it is pretty interesting to see that that come through, or the comments that come through on some of the tickets when they're actually looking for information. And like, and a lot of it's already in the tool. Like you said about the approvals and, you know, why is my, you know, order stuck? Why isn't it fully approved? Well, just
looks like we have a
looks like we have a fire alarm maybe.
oh no, seriously?
Yeah, I'm gonna end it.
Okay, all right, thank you guys.